All right, well, let's go ahead and get started. Hello again. Thank you all for being here and joining us for our next installment of our Friends of HSF Alumni Speaker Series. We're very excited for today's speaker, Alexa Kelly, who will be discussing how to balance entrepreneurship in graduate school. Thank you to those of you who submitted questions ahead of time. If you submitted a question today and it goes unanswered, please feel free to submit the question via the chat feature. If time allows, we will be submitting these questions to Alexa live. Our student moderator for today is Ashley Crisafulli. Ashley is a second-year student from Tampa, Florida, majoring in human resource management and psychology. Ashley is a member of the National Residence Hall Honorary, Phi Eta Sigma, and the FSU Club Swim Team. Thanks for being here, Ashley. I'd now like to introduce our guest this afternoon, Alexa Kelly. After receiving a BS in Anthropology from Florida State University in 2016, Alexa entered graduate school at the University of North Texas Health Science Center. She is currently a fourth-year Ph.D. candidate in biomedical sciences, and her current research focuses on climatic adaptation and human evolutionary anatomy. Specifically, her dissertation project investigates the extent to which human nasal anatomy is shaped by environmental and metabolic forces. In addition to being a full-time doctoral student, Alexa is an entrepreneur. She owns Periwink'd Vintage, a Texas-based small business selling women's vintage clothing. Alexa has a passion for fashion and continues to grow her small business, but her primary career ambition is to become a university professor and contribute innovative research to the study of human evolution. Thank you for being here, Alexa. I'm now going to hand it over to Ashley.
Thank you, Amy, and welcome, Alexa. Before we get started, participants, please feel free to ask any questions in our chat to our hosts, and we will do our best to get to them. I'd like to start by just asking you, Alexa, share briefly a little bit about your journey through FSU and how you got into your PhD program and became a business owner.
Thank you so much, the Friends of HSF and Ashley and Amy, for having me. This is such an honor. Well, getting into research in graduate school, definitely being a part of UROP, the Undergraduate Research Opportunities Program, in my undergrad at FSU was such a guiding light. I was not only a part of UROP, but I had the opportunity to be a UROP leader in my senior year, where I got to learn a little bit more about teaching. And that really just changed my outlook on what career I wanted. There I learned about what a career in academia could look like through my undergrad research in the Anthropology department. And beyond that, just the technical aspect of research, I learned what I enjoyed doing. I really learned about which specific subject in anthropology that really just gave me a passion for what I do today. I think it's such a privilege to learn that you can ask big questions and get big answers through research. And it's just one of the biggest lessons I learned. I took a gap year after Florida State, and I worked as a professional archaeologist for the Florida Department of State in Tallahassee. And it was during that gap year where I was gaining work experience that I took the GRE in preparation for grad school. I shopped around to which program I wanted to go to, spent a lot of time writing personal statements, talking to professors, interviewing, things like that. And I really found that year helpful for just getting all of that stuff done. That was its own full-time job. I ultimately decided to go to UNT HSC in Fort Worth, Texas, because there was a professor here, still is, he's my advisor now, who I was really interested in working with. And ultimately he was the best fit for what I knew I wanted to do. I graduated from FSU in 2016. I started grad school in 2017, and I started my business as a hobby in 2018. I made it official in 2019. And that's the story.
Thank you, Alexa. We had questions that participants submitted for you today. So let's start with, what challenges have you faced when it comes to marketing, and how did you overcome it? Also, how did you go about building community on social media? Did you have a specific strategy?
Man, there's a reason social media marketing is so big right now, because it's so important. I'm definitely still learning and growing a social media community. I wouldn't say that I'm Instagram famous or anything like that. But I think what helped me the most was joining a group here once I moved to Fort Worth, well, to DFW in general, that had a similar interest and a similar mission. So Periwink'd Vintage is very focused on sustainable fashion, in eco-friendly options, reduce fast fashion, reduce shopping at malls and fast fashion stores like that, where we could reuse textiles that already exist. And there's a group here called the Revamp that focuses on sustainability by hosting clothing swaps and different events like that to encourage sustainable fashion. And I really sought out a group like exactly like that. And once I joined on social media and in person, they helped me so much grow my community on social media, on Instagram. They really shared my stuff. They had events where I could meet people in person, which is my favorite thing to do, and get the word out about my business. So that was definitely an important marketing strategy. As far as like on Instagram, suggestions for building it, my strategy is really just to define my aesthetic, even though I think that word is a little bit overused, but I think always give your followers, your community, a reason to come to your page. That was always something important to me. Like when they click on Periwink'd Vintage, I want them to kind of get it right off the bat, like understand what I'm doing this for, what I like, what they can expect going forward. And so I try and just keep things consistent that way.
And what are some of your successful time management strategies?
So time management is huge. It's another big thing. So for me, I really think of time management about priorities. I've never really struggled with time management. I consider it a skill. It's all about priorities. I am a full-time Ph.D. student, so I have to be really careful with my free time. I don't have a lot of free time. And in grad school, your free time is supposed to be for what you do for your graduate research, your graduate work, which I think is a very toxic way of thinking about downtime. And I'm so thankful that my PhD program is fully funded and that my business can be more of a hobby. So it is something I really just enjoy doing, not something I have to do to survive. So that is something I'm grateful for. And so grad school is always going to be my first priority. So any time I set aside for my hobby, my small business is good second priority. It's just how it has to be during this time in my life. And I really try and prioritize everything I do. I structure my day kind of that way. So I'm good at making lists, and I time manage everything I need to get done in my 24-hour period. And then whatever is left over, I put in towards my business. And so a lot of people ask me, like, how are you doing these two things? And I just say, like, you really can do it all, if you prioritize it. So if you find yourself spending evenings, watching Netflix, or on the weekends, you I don't know, go to the dog park or something like that. Like, there's nothing wrong with those things. I do those things. I love Netflix. But when I am partaking in those kind of activities, I know in my head that that's because I'm not prioritizing something else. I'm prioritizing watching Netflix right now, which is totally fine. But when you start thinking about things that way, you always have time to get the things that you want to get done because you prioritize them. So, yeah.
What is one of the most challenging things you have to balance between school and business?
So I think this is also the most challenging question that I received, because I think I know what people expect me to say, and that is that it's balancing time-wise, graduate school and owning a small business. But like I said, I don't really struggle with that because I really just love selling vintage and being a part of like a fashion community so much that it really is something I enjoy doing. So I don't really struggle getting things done because it's part of that is fun for me. I think my biggest challenge has been honestly communicating what I do with my friends, my family, and my colleagues about my business. I found it very difficult for people to take it seriously. I'm not really sure why that is. I think people underestimate how much work goes into being an entrepreneur. I think people underestimate when I say it's a clothing business and I'm a woman, and I think people think, oh, girls and their clothes. But what really it is I'm a female-owned clothing business. I'm not selling a hand-me-down couch on Facebook Marketplace. I'm running a legitimate small business. I'm a one-woman accountant. I'm a curator. I'm a tax specialist, personal shopper, social media marketer, online retailer. Whatever you want, but it's a job in and of itself. So that's been a challenge to me.
And how did you go about scheduling classes while operating your business?
So my business is completely online. So I have whenever free time I have during the week and my weekends. So it never really interferes with my courses. And that was strategic because, like I said, I have to put grad school as my number one priority. So I knew going into this venture that I needed it to fit around my grad school and be a little bit more flexible. So it's 100% online.
When you finish your PhD, what is your plan? Will you continue owning your business and starting your new career as a professor?
Okay, no los dos. I'm going to do both, God willing. My plan is to become a university professor, which will involve moving to a new city. So we'll see what options are in said new city. I don't know where I'm going to be living in 2 years, which is just kind of the story of academia. Way in the future, I'd really like to own a brick and mortar store, a physical location. So moving the business from online to in person, that would be a dream. And at that point, I'd probably have a team that managed the store while I'm off at my real job being a professor, but I definitely still want to do both.
What challenges have you faced as a business owner during COVID?
Again, I'm really lucky that my business is fully online, so I didn't have to deal with lockdown closures and things like that. I ship everything through USPS pretty much, and so USPS was up and running the whole time. But the post and the mails, I'm sure everybody here has experienced, is extremely delayed due to like fewer employees working in the postal system right now. So that's been a big issue, is helping customers understand that things are just moving a bit slower and there's not as much of a promptness as there was before. And I think everything is just so uncertain right now that people are spending a little less frivolously these days. They're spending differently. So I have seen a little bit of a dip in sales from COVID, but I can't really complain. I understand it.
And I know you said your store is online, but do you have a large staff that work for you, or do you close when you're in class or studying or anything?
Just little old me. I don't have anyone else that works for me. I mean, my husband helps out when he can. And I don't really close ever. It's kind of a 24/7 operation.
Your PhD, dissertation focus, and your business are so different. What would you say makes it work?
They are really so different. I'm a full-time biomedical scientist all day long. And then, what did I say in my bio? I have a passion for fashion. It's so funny in the evenings. But I think it all comes down to people are complex. Everybody has interests outside of their job. I'm just so lucky that I think both of the things that I do are great and they interest me both equally. So like I said, you really can do it all. You shouldn't feel bad if you, let's say, are like really into computers, but you're a professional athlete during the day. There's nothing wrong with exploring both sides of your personality, your interests. What makes it work is just being truly interested in both things. It's not really a chore to run my business. Grad school is a chore at times. Anybody in grad school will say that, but that's just kind of part of the game. And my goals for both have never changed. So I know I want to be a professor, so I need to do this. And I know I want to have a successful business, so I keep doing that.
What are your main tips and tricks to being a successful entrepreneur?
I spend a lot of time thinking about this question because I think imposter syndrome sets in, and I feel like, what do I have to suggest when I'm still learning myself? But I think I made a list of some things I would suggest to a new entrepreneur. So beyond having a really good idea and being passionate, that's obvious. I think that that's kind of given advice, and it'll only get you so far. I think you need to get the legal side of things sorted out. So do lots of research on how to register your business in your state, learn about sole proprietorships versus LLCs. You need to define a way to track your income, get sales tax permits in your state if you need to. Learn how to report your income to the IRS, whether you need to do that quarterly or yearly or what works best for you. Ideally, you should have all of these like boring details nailed down before you make even your first sale, because getting it started from the get-go is way easier than being halfway through and trying to backtrack what sold when and to who. So I think making an appointment with an accountant with a list of questions that you already have is a logical first step. And it can be really pricey, and I understand seeking professional help is pricey, but I'm sure all of you know at least one accounting major at Florida State. So I suggest buy them a coffee, have a chat. Yeah. And so next thing, I think make quality content on social media and in your physical presence. So what I mean by that is I can't really think of a business that wouldn't benefit from or need at least a quality Instagram account, website, business card, mailer, in-person poster, posted in a coffee shop, things like that. I think you have to put effort into that and keep the language concise, keep the content looking attractive, because it actually really does matter, especially in this digital world. And if you don't know how to do that, that's fine. Find somebody who does, and it doesn't have to be expensive. So like on Etsy, there's graphic designers that will make you a whole logo, define your brand, give you colors, make you a mailer, help you design your website for like $40. And that's not a bad investment. And I think good graphic design can equate to trustworthiness, speak to the quality of your work, and help spread the word for you, which is really important. Last one is keep an eye on your mental health and don't get overwhelmed. So I don't want any of you to think that I just push it to the limit all day, every day. I just work 24/7. That's not true. I just keep serious tabs on my mental health in relation to tasks that need to be completed. I'm a natural type A extrovert person, so my default is just to go all day long and just have endless energy for the things I like doing. But I know that at times I need to take breaks, and I need to learn that that's okay, and there's nothing wrong with that. If it gets too much to handle, which is so many times, take a break from your business, or my business is my second priority. So I know if it's getting overwhelming, I need to take a break and focus on priority number one. And then once I get a handle on things, I know I can fill my time up with a little bit more things. But ultimately, if I'm not having fun doing my business anymore, I know it's not going to be successful. So I know it's important to maintain that balance. That's my advice.
All right, and we have a question from the chat. What are the basic steps to starting a small business in regards to legal work? Would you suggest starting a small business during the end of your undergraduate experience? What are some of the methods you use to get your business out there / known to the public?
Okay, actually, I might need you to remind me of all of those questions, but I'll start with the first one. Best steps to getting started, and should you start your undergrad career? I don't think there's any time that's too early once you're an adult over 18 to starting your business, because there's no pressure once you start it to do anything with it. So what I mean by that is the first step is going to be probably registering the name of your business with the state. And so every state's differently. I did it in Texas, so I'm imagining you're in Florida, so it'll be a little bit different. So once you register the name and you kind of pay the state to register your name and get a tax identification number, there's no real pressure with that, but it's just kind of putting your name in the game, making sure another business doesn't have your name. It's kind of a logical first step. And it'll help you nail down which tax category you're going to be in, whether you're going to be selling automotive parts, or maybe you're not selling anything at all. Maybe you're, I don't know, paralegal or something like that. So it'll be good to just get that in writing. And then after that would be establishing whether or not you want to be a sole proprietorship or an LLC or a different kind of business. And really all that means is defining how you will be reporting your income. So with a sole proprietorship, and I'm not an expert, by the way, this is just general information, please do your research, but it has to do with how you report your income. So with a sole proprietorship, my income is just within my own income when I report my taxes at the end of the year. So that's different for an LLC, which is a limited liability company, which might be better if you want to have a physical location and liability law that factors in there. But these are all questions for, like I said, an accountant friend would be really helpful. And I don't think anytime, if you have an idea and you're an undergrad, I don't see why you couldn't start it now and take the pressure off. Like, just because you start the business doesn't mean you have to like instantly start making sales or, doing something like that. It's just kind of putting your idea in a little bit more concrete terms. What were the other questions?
What are some of the methods you use to get your business known to the public?
Yeah, still working on that. I think social media is a big step, just because you can access so many people at once. And I before COVID, I really enjoyed doing things in person. So I would have booths at markets, and I would also go to markets where I didn't have a booth and talk to other business owners that were there, see what they do, see what markets they're doing next. But that's kind of applicable to my one business. Yeah, social media. I haven't had great luck with like putting a business card or a poster in coffee shops, but I think that's better for the type of business that is like babysitting or maybe like writing help or tutoring, things like that. I think those businesses really do help just putting like physical posters places, like but e-commerce, I don't really think so. What else? Yeah, just Instagram, purchasing ads on Instagram, on Facebook, that really gets the word out. Beyond just followers, it gets people messaging you, engaging in your content, and that translates ultimately to more sales. So, yep.
All right, another question is, how did you go about getting your small business funded while in grad school?
I think by funded, you mean like investment costs. I just started with very, very, very low investment costs. In Texas, it was about $500 to establish a business. That's with registering the name, establishing a sole proprietorship. Even I'll factor in purchasing like a QuickBooks subscription so I could keep track of my sales and things like that. It was probably about $500 in startup costs, which in terms of like a business isn't a lot. That's something I just budgeted for. I don't make a lot as a grad student, so trust me, $500 seems like a lot to me too, but I just budgeted it out. And investment costs for inventory is another big one, but I sell used clothing. So I kind of created a business where I knew I could keep it sustainable in my budget because my inventory costs are relatively low, that was on purpose. So yeah, and then kind of had to be okay with being in the red for a while with spending more than I was making, but I knew it would eventually pay off, and I know I'm just going to keep growing from here. So yeah.
How were you able to keep yourself motivated throughout grad school while also remaining motivated for your business?
I'm not sure I have a great answer for that other than I just enjoy doing it. I think you're always motivated to do things you enjoy. A lot of my friends ask me how I've stayed motivated for so long, because I think a lot of people with their hobbies, it kind of runs its course and they get bored of it. But I think that's kind of why I turned it into a business and didn't keep it a hobby. I have a business, I have customers that are counting on me, and that motivates me to keep going versus if it was just a hobby, nobody cares if I stay or if I go, but it's a business and I treat it like a job. So that motivates me. In grad school, I do not have a suggestion for how to stay motivated in grad school. Sometimes it just really blows. It sucks a lot. And then it gets better. It's just how it is. Sometimes there's just low lows and there's also high highs when you have an achievement. But my motivation is just graduating, which I don't think there's anything wrong with that. I have a goal and my goal is to graduate and be a professor. So I just kind of have to put up with the grad school woes in the meantime.
When did your business inspiration come to you and what timeline did you follow?
Okay, I mentioned briefly, I graduated from Florida State in 2016. I had no plans to start a business ever. I never wanted to start a business. That wasn't one of my goals necessarily. When I started grad school in 2017, I had a really tough time starting grad school. It was so work intensive and I just found like I wasn't doing literally anything else. And I had a lot of period of just looking inward and being like, what do I actually enjoy doing? And took a lot of time doing that. And I realized I just really like curating fashion. I just love clothes, and that sounds really frivolous, but we've already talked about how I don't think that is a good way of thinking about your hobbies. If you enjoy doing it, it's not frivolous. Doesn't matter what gender you are, really. I just enjoy collecting clothing, and I at the time was involved in a lot of really creative groups. Like I mentioned, I have a lot of friends that are photographers. I did theater my whole life, and so I was just always connected to more creative people, and I realized photographers need people to style their photo shoots, and I have a lot of clothing. And so I started doing that, and then I love thrifting. I love estate sales. The more I went, the more I was like, dang, I don't want to wear that stuff because it's too big or too small, but I really think somebody should have it. And then that's kind of where I started maybe I could sell this stuff. And then I was like, let's do it. I just jumped feet first and I started selling things I already had. So 0 investment costs really. And I started collecting more and more, and it just turned into a whole thing. So.
In what ways do you take a break from it all, and how often is that?
Taking a break. I don't really take breaks. When I get really overwhelmed, let's say I have an exam, I'm done with my coursework. Right now in my period of my Ph.D. So I do have a little bit more free time now, but like I said, it's supposed to be for, writing and things like that, my dissertation. But so when I did have exams, I would take a whole week off of my business, and I wouldn't shut it down or anything. I would just kind of not put time into it, so I would just not go sourcing for inventory. I wouldn't be sharing on social media that week. And so if I made a sale, I would just package it up. That would take 5 minutes, 10 minutes tops. So I would take little breaks from the tasks. And then over Christmas break and things like that, I usually take time off to see family. But I don't really take extended complete breaks, shutting down my shop and things like that, just because I don't really feel I need to do that. But yeah.
For entrepreneurship majors that may be listening, do you think they should go to graduate school to be successful?
Oh, I feel that's a hot button question. I shouldn't be giving anyone advice on what they should or should not be doing. I don't want to change the course of anyone's career or anything like that. I wasn't an entrepreneurship major, and I'm sure if you are one and you're listening to me, you probably have a lot better, maybe more important things to say, because I just have on the job training. So graduate school for business and entrepreneurship is just not something I know about. The only correlative thing I could think of is maybe fashion merchandising, and the friends I have that are in that. And most of them say that they did not need to pay the costs associated with getting a higher degree in that, and that they learned more from on-the-job training. So I think you're an entrepreneurship major and you're thinking about starting a business, I would talk to people in that field, and I would think if you just talk to them and get real in-person advice and see what they would do, whether they learned a lot in their program and whether it's worth the investment costs. If you think of it like a cost benefit analysis, will the cost associated with going to graduate school benefit me, or will it be more of a burden for the future? And I also would suggest taking a gap year in between. So if you're an entrepreneurship major in undergrad right now, you want to start a business, see if you can make it work for a year. And if you feel like you need more skills, I would say move on to graduate school.
All right, can you talk more about your dissertation topic? I'm incredibly interested in your focus on human anatomy. What is a day in the life of your dissertation work?
Wow, a question about my research. I wasn't expecting that. Talking a little bit more about it. So I study primarily nasal anatomy. My Ph.D. is technically in biomedical sciences, but I'm in the anatomy department. And so all of our research is anatomically focused, but I do have an anthropology background. So that's where I get kind of my evolutionary influence and things like that. When I started graduate school, I knew I wanted to combine those two. And that also was purposeful in going into a biomedical graduate school as opposed to staying in anthropology, because I really wanted more of an anatomy, more of a hard science focus instead of a theoretical focus. So I study internal nasal anatomy, and I look at the outside influences that could be affecting nasal anatomy over time. So I look at things like people living in different environments. Very cold, extreme environments have a certain nasal morphology, a certain nasal shape and size versus someone living in a very, very hot environment. And that's all to do with survivability. You need different respiratory anatomy to be able to breathe and heat and humidify the air properly so you can survive. So that's kind of an established piece of literature. And my dissertation is really focusing on, okay, we have this dichotomy between really, really cold dwellers and really, really hot dwellers, and how their whole craniofacial anatomy is different so they can survive in that environment. But how much does the metabolics affect their respiratory breathing? So people of larger body sizes, like an Alaskan Inuit who needs to have a larger brown fat disposition so they can create heat and survive in extreme cold conditions. But having a larger body size, higher brown fat is higher metabolic costs, which likely means that they're having to intake a higher volumetric oxygen intake to support their higher metabolic function. So how much does higher oxygen intake factor into living in a cold environment? And is there a way we can see where in the nose evolution is selecting for one pressure over another? And then I apply those to human fossils. So my data set is everywhere from like 12 million year old fossils to 10,000 year old skeletons. Yeah, that's what my project is and my data. A day in the life of a grad school student. So I'm a fourth year PhD candidate. So I spent the first 3 years in heavy biomedical coursework. I took biochemistry, cellular biology, physiology, and a bunch of anatomy courses. I also did the first year of medical school because that is what is required at my program. So we take anatomy, physiology, histology, radiology with the medical students, because likely once I graduate from here, I'll be a anatomy professor, most likely. So we have to take the classes we're going to teach one day. So that's why we do medical school. But I'm done with all of that, and I passed my oral qualifying exam, which is a big comprehensive exam you take to like prove that you learned a thing or two in your coursework. Once you pass that, you do a dissertation proposal defense. I already defended my proposal. That just establishes that you have a project that you're interested in, you promise to work on it. And so now I'm in the part where I have to act on that proposal, and I have to be performing that research and gathering data to write a dissertation, which I will hopefully defend. It's supposed to be next year, but COVID, so probably the year after that. So 2 more years. Day in life, I pretty much wake up, try and collect data. I right now, because COVID, I'm using CT scans, so digital skeletons essentially, as opposed to traveling around the world and collecting data on physical human skeletons, which is what I love to do, what I've been doing prior to COVID and what I hope to do afterwards. Yeah, any more questions about that, I can answer them.
Another question about that. Did you struggle to decide what you wanted to conduct your research on and write your dissertation?
No. I know a lot of people do, and if you are struggling with what project you want to have, there is absolutely nothing wrong with that, because I think that is the normal thing. I just had a very defined view of what I wanted to accomplish in graduate school, and I came to a grad school specifically to research under somebody who does exactly this work. So once I came here, it was just a matter of kind of getting it all down on paper. I knew that I wanted to, like I said, collect all this data on physical skeletons and travel around the world. And I was like, how do I do that? And my professor, I knew studied craniofacial anatomy as opposed to postcranial anatomy, which is, neck down, limbs and things like that. I knew I was going to be studying something in the head. He studies nasal anatomy. His name's Dr. Scott Maddox. And so fitting all those pieces together, the project just kind of came organically. And as we started talking about it, I was more excited about it. And so it came pretty easily. But yeah.
Do you have a community in both your entrepreneurship world and PhD world? And do those communities encourage you to do well in both worlds?
100%, yes. The community I've fostered and become a part of, mostly through Instagram, and then in person, encourage me so much. I'm always learning things about them, about, business practices, about just fashion, about in-person marketing, social media marketing, and just being around people who are passionate about the same thing as you is just the most delightful thing, I think, for an entrepreneur, for a person, for maybe just an extrovert, I don't know. But I'm just really thankful for the friends I've made and just how encouraging they are. I definitely suggest seeking out communities like that or building your own, starting a club. Even if you're not a student, you can still start a club in your neighborhood. And then in my graduate school world, graduate schools come with cohorts usually that start the same year as you, that are like built-in people who are going through the same thing that you're going through. And I'm endlessly encouraged by their intelligence and drive.
Awesome. Thank you, Alexa, so much. Thank you to everyone that submitted questions. Those were great live questions for her and just an abundance of information. And honestly, as a doctoral student now myself, I am tired from listening and wondering how you balance it all. And I completely commend you on all of that because it's pretty amazing. So thank you for being here today and sharing your experience and your knowledge. And thank you to Ashley for moderating. If any of you came on late or weren't able to submit a question and want to, feel free to email me. You're more than happy to follow up and I can connect with Alexa. Also, if you logged on late and didn't catch the whole thing or want to rewatch to get an answer, I will be posting this on our Friends of HSF YouTube starting tomorrow, and I will send you all a follow-up email with the recording. I'm going to place a bunch of different things in the chat right now, including my email address and our social media channels, so that you can follow us, check our videos. Lastly, be sure to keep an eye out on our social media for our next speaker series. We have 2 more for the semester. And our next one is October 26th at 3 p.m. and it's featuring alumnus Chris Land. And Chris is going to discuss cryptocurrency, Bitcoin, banking and tech, financial services, law school, and public service. So a whole bunch of information that would be very interesting. So if you're interested in that, definitely check us out on social media and register and join us. Thank you again to Alexa. Thank you, Ashley. And we're so glad all of you joined us today. Stay safe. Bye.